By the way, that dog must have been obese because if it weighed that much and yet it wouldn't close around them, that to me means they had a little pork dog.
But that's just your opinion.
That's just my opinion because I didn't see the obese dog, but I know in my mind that dog was obese.
But I'll tell you what, these sweaters sell really well on Etsy. That is the platform for these kind of sweaters.
Why is a toddler wearing a motorcycle?
Well, toddler wants to look cool too. Hi, and welcome to our What Sold video for October 13th through 19th, where we will go over every item that sold across multiple reselling platforms. And later in this video, we're also going to talk about the technique that we use to get negative feedback removed. It's getting harder and harder to get negative feedback removed on eBay, but we do have some tips that will help you out. All right, let's dive in. The first thing we sold, we're actually starting off really bad here. The first thing we sold was a Cabby women's jean jacket, and it had a detachable lace peplum or trim. We got this a long time ago, like maybe 3 or 4 years ago, right?
It was a long time ago.
We got it at a thrift store. We paid up for it because that's what our comps had shown.
$10.73.
So we paid $10.73 for this, but we just could not get it to move. Ultimately, we sold it on eBay for $25, losing 2 cents. But the good news is that we recomped $10.71 on that.
And that it's gone and the coat closet has more room now.
Yeah. So that was just a bad buy. In fact, I would say that Cabby, for me, now, like in the recent last 2 or 3 years, has just not. I can't get it to move.
I never pick up Cabby.
Yeah.
I find it to be kind of a meh brand. To me, it's kind of mid.
Not something you would wear?
It's not something I would pick up. It's just kind of mid.
Next up was Under the Dome. This is a Stephen King series on DVD. It was seasons 1 and 2. We got this at a garage sale for $2 and it sold for $15.19. Next up was a 2017 Texas Motor Speedway t-shirt. We got this at an estate sale for just $1 and it sold for $12.68. Next up was a dog toy, a dog chew toy called a Bonehead. And we got this at the thrift store. It was brand new in the package for $1.35. It sold only for $9, but we got good feedback on it. And
doubled our money.
Yeah, they were happy with it. Next up was a pair of men's Peter Millar golf pants. We got these at that garage sale. We paid $3 for them. They sold for $30. I know, we keep selling stuff. I keep saying like that's the end.
They just keep showing up.
But I obviously don't know what I'm talking about. Next up was a viewer sale. This was a lot of 5 Vietnamese children's VHS tapes from various different brands and companies. These were sold to a viewer named Henry. So thank you so much. We really appreciate
my brother's
your support.
name's Henry.
It is. So this we got for no cost. This was gifted to us to sell by friends and family, and it sold for $49.98.
Nice.
Next up was a canvas backpack or rucksack by the brand Goodium. This was, we could tell when we found this in the Goodwill bins, it was just a really high quality item. It did have some damage on it. One of the buckles was broken.
It didn't have damage. The buckle wasn't broken, just the buckle part was missing.
So the buckle didn't work.
The buckle
was broken.
I wouldn't call it damage though. It was like it had just come off and was gone.
I would consider that damage.
It was just missing pieces.
Yeah.
I wouldn't consider it damage. I'd consider it missing parts.
Semantics. All right. So we got this at, I believe, the South Austin Goodwill bins. Yeah. And we paid $1.03 for that. It sold for $32.99.
Even broken.
Damaged. Next up was a vintage cognac leather suede handbag. It was marked Hong Kong. We got this at one of the
Houston bins.
Actually, no, is this one the same? Yeah, we got this one at one of the Houston bins. And we paid $1.60 for it. It sold for $35. And if you have not...
$34.
What did I say?
$35.
$34. So, and if you don't know what we're talking about, we actually just launched a series where we traveled all across the state of Texas and visited every single Goodwill bins in the state of Texas. And we're doing a video series on that. The first video would have launched this past Sunday. So you guys check that out.
And technically it's not a bin video, but it was on the bins trip.
Yeah, semantics.
So.
All right, next up was a women's North Face jacket. We found this in one of the Houston Goodwill bins, and we paid $1.73 for it. It sold for $25. Next up,
a lot of stuff from that trip.
I know. Next up was one of Kevin's football cards. It was a Collector's Edge Excalibur Challenger Rookies card for Rashawn Salam. This sold for $6.59. This is a harder to find set.
It was a nice set.
Next up was a lot of 2 Polly Pocket carry cases. It included the Dazzlin' Doll Care and Trendy Townhouse. These are actually items that I bought many years ago on eBay. I bought them used and gave them to Nina for Christmas. I used to do that a lot when they were little. I would buy used toys and give them to them for Christmas because the kids did not know any difference. It was good for the environment and it was good for my pocketbook. So these were her.
And now we're
toys.
doing the same thing.
Exactly.
Selling to somebody else who's doing the same thing.
So these came from our personal collection and they sold for $22. Next up was a vintage pastel satin quilted baby blanket. It had Dutch girls and boys on it and windmills. It did have some damage. We got this at a local thrift store called Texas Thrift. We paid $4.31 for it and it sold for $16 on Poshmark. Next up was a pair of Cole Haan leather riding boots. We got these at a thrift store.
The same thrift store.
Did these get returned or was this all the cost to repair?
You paid to get them repaired.
Okay, so I think I paid around $20 for them at the thrift store. And then when we got them home, we realized one of the soles was loose and damaged. So I did take them to the cobbler and had them resold. So our all-in cost on these for the cost of the goods plus the repair was $51.64. But they did sell for $90. So we still made a profit on those.
Sounds good. Cobbler.
Cobbler, yeah. What's your favorite?
Blackberry.
Yeah. I'm not a huge cobbler fan, but I do like a good dump cake.
Blackberry with some vanilla ice cream melting on top of it.
Well, we don't have cobbler, but I did make coconut macaroons.
She did.
Yeah, they're really good. I only ate like 5 or 6 today only. All right. Next up was a 1992 McCulloch Eager Beaver chainsaw user manual. This was gifted to us to sell. This was probably one of my dad's chainsaws, old chainsaws.
Yeah.
And it sold for $14. Next up was another viewer sale. This was also sold to Henry, so thank you again. This was a lot of 2 Vietnamese children's VHS movies. So I hope you're enjoying watching those and getting some nostalgic memories.
Well, he sent us a letter. He's saying he did enjoy watching them.
He did send us a nice letter. And thank you also for your nice letter, Henry. Actually, if anybody wants to communicate with us, this is a good time to mention that you can reach out to us via numerous methods. We are on Instagram. You can send me a DM. We're on Facebook. You can send us a DM. We're at Nina's Jewels LLC on both of those. I also have our email address and a P.O. box listed in the description box below. So multiple ways to reach out to us if you want to. Did I say how much actually, I don't think I said how much he paid.
I don't think you got through the...
Yeah, I didn't. So we had no cost on those VHS. They were gifted to us and they sold for $29.99.
And that is the, we got a ton of them. We had sold some before, and then we sold these 2 sets. They're all gone.
Yeah.
We don't have any more.
So that's definitely something to be on the lookout for.
If I see them, I'm picking them up.
All right. Next up was a Build-A-Bear Workshop Thanksgiving turkey plush outfit. We got this at the Build-A-Bear garage sale where we paid just $1 for everything out of a big tub of Build-A-Bear. This sold for $31.99. Next up was a Top Paw orange and gray ripstop medium 30 to 55 pound dog life jacket. This was new with tags. It was gifted to us to sell. We had no cost and it sold for $15.19. This is an item that we got negative feedback on. The buyer did not reach out to us ahead of time, and their negative feedback, and I don't think I have a screenshot of it, but if I do, I will post it. But basically what their negative feedback said was that we misrepresented the item and it didn't fit their dog.
The package, it was a new in package.
Yes.
So the package from the manufacturer said 30 to 55 pounds.
But it also had a girth.
Their dimensions, yes.
They also had,
there was a picture of that in the listing.
Yes, exactly. And it said that you needed to check both to ensure that it would fit your pet. So they claimed that we did not provide them the information that they needed and left us negative feedback about it. So this is an item that I had the negative feedback successfully removed, which is good because we actually don't have any more feedback removal requests because I've used them all because I use them if we get a neutral or anything. I don't know when that re-ups, but I'm hoping it re-ups soon. But I will share some advice on how we successfully got this negative feedback removed because as most of you who are resellers know, it is harder and harder now to have negative feedback removed on eBay. But the good news is that I do think that what eBay has done a good job with is having more clear guidelines on when a feedback is eligible for removal. I'm going to show you guys on my computer the feedback policy, and it very explicitly states when they will remove feedback. And this page has a lot. It includes a category of harmful, inappropriate, irrelevant comments and images. And then there's a bunch of bullet points under that with really specific examples of when they would remove feedback. Extortion and manipulation. If somebody is saying, I won't leave a negative feedback if you give me a full refund. That is considered feedback extortion. There's some examples of that. Buyer-related transaction issues. If the buyer says, I want to cancel my order, but then you cancel it and then they come back and leave negative feedback, they would remove that. And then there's a list of other examples of when they would remove it. Item delivery issues. If the buyer says in their feedback, this item took a really long time to get here, but it was actually delivered within eBay's stated handling time expectations, that would be removed. And then there's other examples here. Returns issues. There's some examples. eBay site or program issues. So anyway, my point is that eBay has taken the time to really explicitly lay out exactly when they will and when they won't remove a feedback. And I felt like that I was really successful with having this feedback request honored and having the negative feedback removed because I went into this page, I found exactly how and why the buyer had broken the feedback policy. I stated that to eBay when I messaged them through Facebook, and because I stated my case and my case was not really arguable because they did break the rules, they removed the feedback. So what I specifically said is under buyer-related transaction issues, I stated that the feedback was not fair because we had very explicitly shown what the manufacturer's recommendations were. And on this section of the policy, it states that they remove neutral and negative feedback when they can see that the buyer is raising an issue that was correctly disclosed in the listing. So it was very clear. It was in black and white, and the representative immediately removed it.
Put all of your information in your listing.
Yes.
That covers you. Make sure you detail every piece of damage, every scratch, put it in your description.
Be thorough. And then if you do get negative feedback that you feel is not warranted, find the exact part of the policy that fits within to, state that to the representative, and that is your best chance to get that feedback removed. So that's our advice. And there are going to be times when your feedback won't be removed because it's just their opinion. And that's really where it's getting more and more difficult, is that if it is a buyer's opinion, even if their opinion doesn't make any sense or is dumb, eBay won't remove it.
The ones I hate a lot are the ones where they give a description and rate the item like we're the manufacturer.
Yeah.
By the way, that dog must have been obese Because if it weighed that much and yet it wouldn't close around them, that to me means they had a little port dog.
But that's just your opinion.
That's just my opinion because I didn't see the obese dog, but I know in my mind that dog was obese.
Judging much? All right, next up was a Fruit of the Loom pair of adult sweatpants, just like your classic drawstring, cinched waist, cinched leg. Those sell though. Those sell in most brands for us. Not for tons, but they always sell. So these were gifted to us to sell and they sold for $11.25. Next up was a really high-end men's tie. This was a tie by the brand Ben Silver, which we had never heard of, but when I comped it, I realized it was worth a lot. It was 100% silk, and it was a gray and red rep stripe, which is like a diagonal stripe. That's what rep stripe means. And we got that from one of the Goodwill bins, I think.
One of the Houston bins.
Yeah, one of the Houston bins. We found a lot of silk ties. And we found a jackpot of silk ties at a garage sale recently too.
Oh,
so we're going to become tie experts.
We've been selling so many accessories.
Yeah.
Men's ties, women's pantyhose, they've been
accessories
selling
is a good category. That is a good category. So this we paid $1.77 for. It sold for $42.48. Really so don't sleep on some brands of men's silk ties will sell for a lot. So
light, so small, so easy to take pictures, easy to store, easy to ship.
Exactly. All right, next up was a 1995 Bowman's Best Blue Rookie football card for the player Luther Ellis. This was Kevin's and it sold for $3.79.
It's a nice set.
Next up was a Doctor Who VHS tape. Was it 1 or 2?
It was 1.
Okay, it was 1, and we tested it, and it worked. This was gifted to us. We had no cost, and it sold for $9.99. Next up was a Halloween mask. It was vintage from 2001. The brand was Disguise, and it was a green and black latex burglar wet bandit, like Home Alone style mask. We got this at the San Antonio bins for 80 cents. It sold really fast for $19.99, but we did list it right before Halloween. Next up was a Red Stiegel, who is a local celebrity. I don't know if he's really that nationally known, but he's an author, a musician, kind of a cowboy type figure. And this was a audiobook on cassette of his poetry. We got that at the San Antonio bins for 80 cents. It sold for $9.99. Next up was a Vitantonio waffle maker recipes and instruction booklet. We found a lot of instruction booklets and several for different food items at the San Antonio bins. We paid 87 cents for this. It sold for $8. Unfortunately, we accidentally sent the wrong thing.
I think I sent it first thing in the morning. And we had 2 waffle maker manuals, which is rare. But normally I compare the picture and everything before I send it. But I must have been groggy that morning because I never send the wrong thing.
Yeah, this is actually, in all the time that we've been reselling on eBay, this is only the second time we've ever done that.
I can't even believe I did it still. It still bothers me. I still wake up at night. It's the wrong manual.
But we do have really good systems to put in place to avoid that. So, but you're going to have mistakes as a reseller. That was just a
mental breakdown on my part.
So the way we handled this, the buyer was really nice. Actually, they reached out and said that we sent the wrong thing, asked if we still had the other one. We checked, we did, and we told them to keep the one that we sent by mistake, and we went ahead and sent them. I went ahead and refunded them for their order and then had them repurchase the item, and I actually honored a less expensive price than what we originally sold it for and sent the correct thing. So we lost money on this. We lost $11.82, but we did not get negative feedback. So that's what's important.
You told them not to send it back, but they had already sent it back.
Oh, is that what happened?
Yeah, that's why there's we would have had $5 less.
Yeah, that's true.
Negative on there, but we got the manual back, so we relisted it.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
So that's technically,
true. Once again, I'm lying.
We sold the second one to them.
Yeah.
And then we got the original one back, which we'll relist.
Yeah.
But, it's one of those things.
Anyway, we lost money on that deal, but whatever.
But that was on my error, so.
We were lucky that buyer was really nice.
Yeah, they could have easily left us bad feedback for that.
Okay, so next up was a 1990 Donruss Best of the American League Baseball card for the player Cal Ripken Jr. This was Kevin's, and it sold for $2.49.
It's a nice set.
Next up was a vintage 1993 Bernat Latchmaker, a latch hook kit for a mallard duck pattern. This we got at the Fort Worth Goodwill bins for $1.50. It sold for $15.99. It took forever to sell, surprisingly.
That one took a long time because normally we sell those pretty fast.
Next up was a men's pair of Tom's sneakers. They were like high top sneakers or hybrid style shoes. We got these at a garage sale for $4 and they sold for $20. We did not make a lot on those. We had them listed for a long time, and I finally just accepted a low offer on that to get them out because they were taking up a lot of space. Next up was a Barbie Loves Pets blind bag, Maine Coon cat, and Cocker Spaniel. We didn't have carriers for either one of them. We got these out of a thrift store toy bag for 77 cents, and they sold for $9.68. Next up was a wide silver tone and rhinestone buckle up stretch bracelet by the brand Premier Designs. We got this out of a storage unit for 28 cents and it sold for $17. Next up was a 6-pack of 3D Lilo and Stitch food grade silicone safety tumbler straw covers. These were gifted to us to sell. We had no cost. They sold for $7.98. They sold really fast. Next up was a Black Rifle Coffee Company men's green camouflage quilted hoodie. This is a brand to be on the lookout for. They make a lot of different merch for their company. I think it's a coffee company and brewery maybe, but I know that Commonwealth Flipper has sold a lot of their merch, like mugs and stuff. He's been selling a lot of mugs. And some of those go for a lot. So when we saw this, we decided to pick it up.
Yeah, that was in the Houston bins. That's where I got that one.
We paid $2.03 for it, and this sold for $49.99.
Really fast, too.
Yeah. Next up was a Dark Cloud 2 Sony PlayStation 2 game. It had no manual, but it was otherwise in good condition. We got this from one of the Houston bins. We paid $1.72, and it sold for $26.99.
I don't know how you never, ever, ever find games in the bins. Somehow the games people hadn't gotten to that bin yet, or
I got lucky.
Walked past it and didn't see it was under something. She picked up 3 or 4 games that day. It was weird.
Yeah. Next up was a pair of the saltwater sandals, kids sandals, that we got from the kids shoe liquidation. We paid $9.09 for these, and they sold for $27.99. Next up was a vintage 1990s women's red Christmas sweater vest. I described it as a not ugly sweater, and it was by the brand Tiara. We got this from a garage sale a long time ago for $4.
We bought like 10 from that lady.
Yeah.
We bought so many.
And our timing was just terrible because then COVID hit. People quit going to the office, quit going to the place where they would wear something.
And we had a whole bin full of giant, ugly sweaters.
But I'll tell you what, these sweaters sell really well on Etsy. That is the platform for these kind of sweaters because we have a bunch left over. I cross-listed them to Etsy and they've been selling really well. So we paid $4 for this at a garage sale and it sold for $32.99 on Etsy. Next up was a lot of 4 Good Housekeeping recipe booklets. We got these at an estate sale for $2.75 and they sold for $14.39. Next up was a really pretty Victorian style vintage hair comb made of plastic tortoise shell and gold tone. It had like kind of an enamel attachment thing on it. I don't know what else you would call it, but it was really, this was a really pretty hair comb. The brand was Karina, which is not a brand I'm familiar with. Goody is a brand that you want to be on the lookout for vintage hair products, but this sold for quite a bit as well, in my opinion. I found this in the Fort Worth Goodwill bins for 45 cents and it sold for $18 even. Next up was a vintage 1981 Albuquerque 10th Annual Hot Air Balloon Festival enamel pin. This was his mom's. She gave it to us to sell, so we had no cost, and it sold for $14.38. Next up was 5 IKEA Fintorp black hooks for some kind of like rail. I think it was for like a kitchen rod, and then you put the hooks on it and you can hang utensils and like hot pads and stuff
I just
off
know
of
it was
it.
hooks. I don't know what it was for.
We found these in the San Antonio Goodwill bins. We paid 87 cents and they sold for $14.99. Next up was a men's big and tall 6XB.
It
was very large.
Huge.
The biggest shirt I've ever seen.
It was the biggest shirt I've ever seen.
And that's why we picked it up, because stuff like that sells. The brand was Makobi, and it was a color block with like a faux suede and a quilted section. It was an interesting shirt. It did have a big bleach stain on the bottom, which we disclosed. We had paid $2.03 for that at one of the Houston bins, and it sold for $20. We got positive feedback on it. So.
Went to the East Coast. I can't remember if it went to New York or North Carolina. It went to the East Coast somewhere.
Yeah. Next up was a 7-Eleven adult uniform t-shirt. When we picked it up, we missed that it had a repaired hole on it, but the hole was repaired really well. So we decided to go ahead and list it and disclose that. We got this at one of the Houston bins for $1.77. It only sold for $9.99 because of the flaw, but we still made profit on that.
That was an easy one.
Uniform shirts for different businesses are a good pickup usually, because people are looking to buy those used and save some money. Next up was an American Eagle men's spell out graphic hoodie. We got this at one of the Houston bins for $1.78, and it sold for $20 even. Next up was a Simplicity brand jeweled pink poodle iron-on applique. It was new in the package. We got this a while ago at the Fort Worth Goodwill bins for 61 cents. It sold for $8.64.
We had that thing for a really long time.
Yeah, it did not take up any space though. Next up was another item from the kids' shoe liquidation purchase. This was a pair of Lemoore suede motorcycle style boots for a toddler. We paid $9.10 for these, and they sold for $23.99.
Why is a toddler wearing a motorcycle?
Well, a toddler wants to look cool too. Next up was a vintage 1990s Disney two-sided Winnie the Pooh pillowcase for a standard size pillow. We got this at a garage sale for $1, and it sold for $11.19. Next up was a really pretty sheer black lace dress by the brand Guess. It was brand new with tags, but it was supposed to have a satin slip underdress, which was missing. So I did list it for significantly less than some of the other ones we're selling for, because it was missing like half the dress. But it retailed for $188. I got that at a garage sale for $2, and it sold for $48. It was really pretty. Next up was another Peter Millar golf pullover. We got this at that golf garage sale for $3, and it sold for $35.
They just keep on giving.
They do. Next up was a Greatest Hits Veggie Tales CD. It was new and sealed. We got this out at, I think, the San Antonio bins for 87 cents, and it sold for $12.99. So that wraps up all of our sales for this week. Let's go over the totals. We sold 47 items.
That's about right on.
Yeah.
That's about our standard, around 50-ish, 45 to 50.
For an average sale price of $21.87.
A little low.
That is low. That's because we lost money on that significant amount of money on two things.
And we had a bunch of very small rinky-dink
We sold a
sales.
lot of cards and stuff too.
Yeah.
So our sales totaled $1,027.75, and that made for a net profit of $454.04, which I think is low for that amount of sales.
For that amount of sales, it is definitely low.
Yeah.
It's less than $10. So.
I think this was during a period in which we were like accepting a lot of lower offers to try to
get the store kicking back after the trip.
Get it going. Yeah. So that's probably why.
I don't know. A little bit low, but still, I mean, again, it's not 300.
Yeah.
So 450's, it's decent.
We're not complaining.
No. I'm not going to complain about any of it. It's money.
So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please let us and YouTube know by hitting that like button. And if you're not already subscribed, the #1 thing you can do to support our channel is hit that subscribe button. Thanks again for watching, and we will catch you
On the flip side. I got her.
Funny.